Hello, James Hands here from Awaken Therapy. Today I wanted to talk with you, good person, about triggering, and where better to do that than down at the beach. So join me down the beach today as we do a bit of a deep dive, excuse the pun, into triggering. Now, triggering is really a colloquial term for what psychology would call an intrusion or an activation. And what that means is when there's something in us that's been stuck, something in us that's been blocked or suppressed or overwhelming, we've defended against it. This can be an emotion, this can be an experience, a memory that was just too hard to process at the time. So what's happened is it's become stuck inside us. It doesn't go away with time, it's stored there in the body-mind, and we all know what it feels like when suddenly we're feeling a rush of intense emotion that seems out of proportion to what's just happened. Now, often we get triggered in relationship or in situations, and we can swear black and blue that that person caused it. If only that person hadn't have done this or that, or said this or that, or not done this, or had it done this instead. You know, it's easy to find someone to blame. But what I've found personally and professionally is that upset is always our own. So if we're upset about something, if we're really reacting to something, the external reality is really the tip of the iceberg. So something happens, it might be less than best, might be really difficult, could be quite catastrophic. And of course there's a reality to that. There is an external reality. We're not dismissing that. But if that's opening up all this extra stuff, then really that's tip of the iceberg. That might be 5, 10, 15, 20% max of our emotion and everything that's going on. And so our first thing is to really recognize when we've been triggered, to become more consciously aware of, oh, I can feel that shift. Oh, I can feel that my upset or my reaction in this is not just an adult response to what's happened. It feels like more. It feels out of proportion. And so what's happened is something old's been triggered. It's intruded into our conscious reality. What's happened is we're no longer in that moment. We're no longer in our right mind or our rational adult present mind. We've regressed. We've triggered. We've been activated. And what happens is we regress back to the age of that wound. And so let's say the wounding was from very young. Let's say it's 5 years of age or 7 or 3 or something, very young. Well, all of a sudden, we're not reacting to the situation like an adult would respond in a mature way. No, we're reacting from a child, from the limited resources of child. And this is where our behaviour can become very kind of clumsy and blunt and irrational. So understanding that principle and really recognizing that, well, in that, it's not necessarily a bad thing. We always judge it as bad because it's painful. The world judges this as, oh, it's negative. Gee, you're having a panic attack, or you're anxious, or you're depressed. You know, the world tends to judge all this as negative because it's so difficult and painful and can drive terrible behaviors and aggression and withdrawal and all sorts of things. But if we understand it as this self-cleansing, healing process of our psyche, when we understand that our inner wisdom knows exactly what to do, and it really uses these opportunities of being triggered as a healing opportunity. Can we deal with this now? Can we address this now, please? Oh, here's a good opportunity. I've got your attention. Can we deal with this issue now? So first thing is to see it as a healing opportunity, and then to notice in those moments when you're triggered. So I was watching a TV show, Downton Abbey, and there's a lovely person in there. There's a character called Anna who's just the most lovely person, and she's married, and anyway, this visiting servant rapes her, and it's just, awful. It's just horrific kind of development in the story. And I had a really sleepless night on this, and it really took me overnight to process it, because what I worked out was that while that event was very dramatic and awful and just horrific, really, but it had triggered something more. And what I finally worked out, probably took many hours, it was a pretty sleepless night, but what I worked out was that she, in her innocence, reminded me of my child. And in the story, she doesn't want to tell her husband because her husband would kill the person and go to jail and be executed. So she just confides in an older woman, but the older woman doesn't do anything or doesn't do enough. She just gets her a new dress rather than call the doctor or call the police. And so what that triggered in me personally was the years when I was a child and my father was getting more and more unwell, his alcoholism was getting more out of control, his bipolar, and he was becoming more abusive, and I'd hear all this and keep me and my brothers awake, and it was an awful time. And so I realised it opened up deeper layers of anger, pain, resentment there at my mother for not doing more. I mean, this was happening for years. This went on for got progressively worse, but let's say 3-4 years. And it was really quite torturous, really. And so the resentment was why didn't you do more? Why didn't you intervene? Why didn't you just, kick him out earlier, like when I was 7 instead of waiting till I was 11? And so, as painful as that was, it was very helpful. That show, Downton Abbey, it's an excellent show actually, and it's very well done. But wow, gee, it pushed my buttons so deep, so strongly, and because I've worked on myself for a long time and I've done a lot of therapy and I've got more comfortable with process, so I was able to recognise, okay, well, this is more than just the show. And that took a while to work out, but eventually just leaning into it and following the breadcrumbs and feeling into it is like, oh, there it is. This anger, this resentment of my mother for not protecting us sooner, for not kicking him out earlier. And there's something healing in that. When we get to the root cause of what's triggered, there's always a shift. When we bring our awareness down to the root cause, not just staying on the surface of what's triggered us, we don't just shoot the messenger, we follow the message right down to the root cause. And when we get there, it's like the penny drops, it's like joining the dots. And when we bring the mind awareness in alignment with the emotion, with the memory, with the chemistry that's in the body, when everything falls into alignment, it heals, something shifts. Something starts to transmute straight away, and so a healing takes place in that. So as shitty as that night was for me, I'm grateful for it, and I'm always grateful for when I get triggered, because once I get past the worst of it, there's always some more growth in that. And this is how I encourage people to work with things. When we're working in therapy, we're not getting triggered per se, we're actually deliberately, gently, going towards those difficult places. So we don't need to wait till we're triggered. But as we get more comfortable doing our shadow work and dealing with these difficult memories and emotions and just learning how to bring loving awareness into it, which is where the transmutation happens, then it becomes easier on your own to manage those moments when you're triggered. So you might be just going through your day, through your week, and something happens, and you find yourself triggered, either mildly or, for me that evening was a very, very strong activation. So knowing, okay, this is something come up spontaneously in the moment, I know how to bring love and attention to it, to do some process work. Therapy is learning how to do that, getting more comfortable and familiar with that. Just more confident about doing that work. We don't have to wait until we're triggered to do our shadow work. We can go looking for things. Okay, what am I sitting with? How am I feeling right now? What's here? We can be doing that deliberately. But when we combine that with a good, healthy way of dealing with being triggered in situ when it's happening through our life, we've really got the best strongest combination for that shadow work. And as you know, I really do hope you know that every little bit that's shifted, every little bit of wounding that gets reconciled creates a bit more space. It's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together from the middle outward. There's a bit more room for peace, for gentle joy, for being who you really are. And that's the goal of it, hey, isn't it? That's the goal of coming down the beach and diving in, is to come back into that ocean of self, to have that space that allows the real you, the greater you, that's a love-based, eternal aspect of the divine, hello soul warrior, to allow more room for the real you, the true self of you to come through. Firstly, for your own peace and joy. Secondly, for your service and your impact, ripple effect out into the world, because the world needs you. You're part of the salvation of the world, if you like. There's those you're sent to serve. So I hope that's of interest. I do have an online program that goes into this in more depth. It's called I'm Triggered. You could have a look at that on the website. Otherwise, yeah, any questions, any comments, please feel free to get in touch. I wish you well with your triggering processing, and yeah, God bless, and yeah, get some sun, get some water, get some grounding, and let's all help each other walk home.